This crane is the XCMG XCT75, and as you might imagine, that means it's a 75-ton capacity crane. This model of it is made by Yagao, and there's some information on the box about the real crane, but it's all in Chinese. Inside the box, the pair of expanded polystyrene trays are factory sealed, and the model is protected by soft paper. So let's peel that back and see what we've got, and there is the crane ready to come out. So let's use the giant hand crane to carefully get it out of the tray, and then we can see what else is left in the box. There's a fly jib and a couple of bags that include some parts. And there's a boom axle which is not broken, it's just loose in the box. And there's a small catalogue of XCMG models. As you can see, the model is tied up with a nice yellow ribbon, and that's to stop the boom moving about in the box. So let's undo that and also remove some other protective packaging. So the first thing we'll do is to put back the boom axle that was loose in the box. It's loose because the fly jib fits to it, and it probably would have been better shipped in one of the bags. The reeving of the big hook in the factory is not right, so we'll snip that off. And it's good that there are a couple of choices of hook for the model. So here we've had a go at properly reeving the big hook block, but the real crane doesn't seem to have a tying off point at the front. So to get that European style, we'll add a piece of chain on, and then carefully attach the hook block to it. As you can see, the hook itself is not a rotating version. The last thing to do if you want to rig it out the box is just to add on the fly jib, and that makes the whole truck fully loaded, including the counterweight. Looking underneath, the detailing is quite good. There are various tanks and components modelled, and one thing you do notice is that this is closer to a truck crane rather than an all-terrain crane. There's also some nice detailing in terms of graphics which are applied, but the model is a bit toy-like in that it has a winding handle fitted to the winch. In fact, there are two winches on the model, but one of them's static and non-functional. Moving to the front, there's also plenty of detailing by the use of graphics, and that includes the weight on the door. The pulleys in the boom head and hook are also in an older style, being solid blocks rather than individual sheaves. There's a plastic cab guard on the crane cab, and the fly jib is metal but with slightly thick lattice work. One nice touch on the model is that the main boom ram is metal. The hooks seem very large, but that may be a Chinese style. But certainly the steering wheel in the cab seems to be too high and too large. But if we go into the crane cab, things are very good, because there's a highly detailed console formed of graphics. While we're here, let's have a look at an accessory set produced by Yagao. And this is a 1:50 scale set of figures to pose with models. It comes in a simple unmarked box, and inside there are a couple of plastic formers which contain the figures. And it's not very kind to them because how can they breathe trapped in between the two bits of plastic? Anyway, they're set free now, and the poses are all very similar to other figures that are produced by other makers. They're not quite the same though, because they seem to be very slightly larger, and the detailing is not quite as good. But certainly they are quite cheap, and once they're out the box they all stand up quite nicely. Looking underneath, the truck chassis and the rear wheels are joined on common axles, and it's nice to see that suspension has been implemented. The front two axles have linked steering, but the range of movement is somewhat restricted. Let's see how the XCT75 performs on the test track, and it rolls along very nicely because it's quite a heavy model. If we give the front wheels a turn, we can see the steering angle that we can achieve. And as you can see, it's fairly small, so the angle of steering is quite shallow. Lastly, let's bounce it up and down, and yes, that suspension works. So now that we're on site, let's set the crane up, and the outriggers are slightly unusual. The rear ones are two-stage and pull out as you would expect. and the front ones are different because they rotate out. Lowering the pads is done in the time-honoured way of unscrewing. They are basic because there's a visible screw thread, but the whole system is strong enough to hold the model up wheels free. It's boom up time, so let's unhook the hook and raise the boom. And there's no friction whatsoever in the main boom ram. But in this case that's a good thing because it's secured by a grub screw and a key is provided to tighten it up. As you would expect, the crane can be rotated, although it was very stiff on the review model. And operating the winch makes use of the old-fashioned winch handle. It would have been better if it had been removable, but it does work very well, and the way the rope winds onto the drum is very good. This is a telescopic crane and the sections pull out smoothly, and there's enough friction between the sections to stop them sliding back in. Overall, the boom profile is pretty reasonable too. The locking mechanism is pretty standard, with each section locking at full extension. A couple of nice smaller features on the model includes the opening cab door, which is a sliding design, and the doors on the truck cab also open. A pointer is included with the model to help you get them open. If you want to go for an extended height, then there is the fly jib available, and it's slightly unusual because the hinge section has also got an offset pin position, so you need to take that out and then reset it to join the two sections together. Once you do that, you get a nice straight fly jib. To fix the fly jib, it just goes over lugs which are on the axles in the boom head, and because of paint thicknesses you might have to fiddle with it a bit to get it to locate properly. The same goes for inserting the steel pins, so you might need to clean out the holes to get the pins fully in. Another option for configuring the boom is to put a short extension on, and it's a little bit like the fly jib because it just clips on over tabs on the boom head. Again, the paint thicknesses come into play here, so it's not an easy fit. And the same applies to the steel pins which fix it into position. So you do need to do some work to clean out the holes to be able to get the pins in properly. Something else you can do if you want a realistic transport look is to unscrew the counterweight block at the back, and that's held in place by two little screws. For the authentic Chinese look, we can then lower the boom, but bring the hook forward so that it rests on the carrier deck, and in that way it avoids the need for a tying on point under the cab. One thing you can also do for the complete look is to rest the main hook block on the carrier deck as well. Let's now check the overall size of the model by doing a dim check. And if we get the tape out to the top of the boom, it's 37 inches or about 94 centimeters. And with a fly jib on, it's about 50 inches or 127 centimeters. And these measurements are reasonably accurate in scale to the real crane. The mechanics figures by Yagao are interesting, and they are relatively low cost, meaning that overall they're rated as good. The XCT75 is also an interesting model, and in China at least it is relatively low cost. Some aspects of the detailing and features are very good, although the winding handle at the back spoils the look a little bit, but it could be cut off. Overall though, the crane has got enough going for it to be rated as very good.